All right, guys. I thought I would move the camera around a little bit on you again. This is Kurt. Welcome to another episode of the Mañana No Mas morning check-in. Today is November 20th. It's a Friday, so happy Friday to you. I hope you got a killer weekend planned. I've already got mine started. I mean, I'm going to work today, of course, but Fridays is a very special time for me. So I do this. I've mentioned on a couple of other morning check-ins, but every Friday I have some mentorship time that is penciled into my calendar, and that is time that I go and spend with my son Hayden, and we call that the mentorship breakfast. And he's got a book that he reads called Streams in the Desert that was given to me by Jared Bridge, and I re-gifted that to him. And it's a daily reading, right? It's usually scripturally based, right? So it'll be something on leadership, prayer, solitude, things like that. So he'll read, I'll read. We go out for breakfast, and then he'll read out of his book. We'll have a discussion. I'll read out of my book. We'll have a discussion, and we talk about goals and things like that. How's school going, and how are things with your friends and stuff like that. So I really, really, really cherish these mornings. These mornings to me are, I mean, they're phenomenal, right? I mean, it's just when I was a kid, I didn't have an adult male figure that poured into me in this way, right? And so I look at my development over the years, and I look back and I go, well, I'm in my 50s now, right? And I go, okay, when did I start getting my act together? When did I start making decent decisions? When did I start, taking responsibilities seriously? Um, I made a lot of bad decisions as a young man, and those decisions followed me, not just, for a week or for a month, but, for decades. And I want to make sure that, I give my kids a better leg up than that, right? To be able to get out and do something. And it's interesting. You don't always get the support in those kinds of things. Some people might brand you, especially if they know you when you're younger, right? And they'll be like, you're not going to do that. You're a loser. You're never going to do that kind of stuff. I don't trust you. I don't believe you. And then you gotta prove them wrong. You gotta be a person that sticks it out, right? Stick to itiveness. You got to be a person that says what you'll do and then do what you say, right? And so I think that's a big thing of it. And in fact, had a conversation with a gentleman just last night who said, "Wow, man, you do that morning check-in like every day." And I said, "Yeah, I do it every day, weekdays, right? Do it every weekday." He said, "But you haven't missed a day." And I said, No, I missed a couple. When I was training, when I did the contract in Los Angeles, I missed a couple of days, but I had made an announcement that I knew I was going to miss a couple of days, with the travel and the hours and stuff like that. I knew that it just wouldn't work out during that contract. And so he was like, "Wow, that's something." He says, because regardless of how many people listen or how many people engage, you keep doing it. And I'm like, well, that's kind of the idea, right? A little more transparency on that. There are times where I think, why do I do this? Why do I get on here every day and have something to say to you guys? Why do I get on here every day and feel like there's some value to offer? One, it helps keep me accountable in my own thing, right? Like I'm gonna, continue to chase goals and take steps forward and continue to morph and change and like that book Leadership was about that we covered, right? I'm gonna keep doing that, and to do that, this accountability of checking in with you guys kind of helps me in that way. Also, I mean, just this week I got a message from somebody in Germany, and they were like, "Please keep doing what you're doing. I love your positive messages, blah blah blah." And when someone messages you from around the world and is like, "I love what you do, thanks for doing it, you're an inspiration, you do add value to me, don't stop." I have a young lady up in Washington sent me a very similar message, and let's just cut to it. In these times, if I can be the source of inspiration or positivity or good feelings for somebody for that day, man, sometimes that's enough, right? And so, yeah, I'd love to make 150, 200, $300,000 a year. I'd love to have some, kick-ass executive job and travel and do things. But let's be realistic. At the end of the day, if you add value to somebody or you give somebody that inspiration to pursue the next step themselves, um, your purpose is is established. Your purpose is manifesting itself. And I know that that sounds otherworldly. That sounds, pyramids and crystals, but it's not pyramids and crystals. It's real life, right? Life is full of relationships, and adding to people can be so rewarding, right? And so when you get, I don't get a lot of feedback, but when I do get that precious, seldom message that comes in that says, "Hey, I really appreciate that. Thanks. Keep doing what you're doing. The positivity helped me get through a bad week." That's enough really to keep going. Because realistically, what is this? I turn on the camera and I say a couple of words to you. Hayden's reading today from Streams in the Desert was pretty interesting. It was about God's provision, having faith in God's provision, and not saying that he's late. I say God's late all the time. And it's funny because people go, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. That's blasphemy. Don't," or people say different things, right? Even non-believers are like, "Wow, you say some pretty crazy stuff about God." And it's like, no, he's God, right? We're made in his image. He's got a sense of humor. He can handle it. If he can make the world, he can handle stuff I might joke around and. But I'll say all the time, people say, "Hey, how's the job hunt come?" I go, it's going. I keep looking. They say God will provide, but I don't know. I think he's running late, but in the grand scheme of things, he doesn't run late. It always works out. I tell the young adults group that we work with, I go, it always works out. It always works out in the end. So don't worry about it. And you know what? If it didn't work out, something happened, I got hit by a bus and I died, well, it'd still work out, because then I'd go to heaven and I'd be with my Savior, right? And so I try not to wrap myself up too much in him being late, right? It feels that way. It certainly feels that way, right? Because we're impatient. But it was interesting. What Hayden read today was a long reading. It had like poetry in it and Psalms and all kinds of stuff. But he read it. He did a really good job with it. And then we discussed it and we broke it down, and we had discussions like, "So dude, tell me how the pandemic's really affecting you as a 13-year-old, right? When's the last time you actually spoke to a friend? Are you still talking to these guys while you're video gaming?" He goes, "I'm not gaming much." "Okay, well, have you talked on the phone?" "No, not really." Right? So I said, "Dude, I don't think that's healthy. I think, sitting around and doing your schoolwork, but then watching YouTube or memes or anime, it might be a distraction, but it's not personally developing you," right? And so I said, "Dude, if you need to use my Zoom, get on a face-to-face call with your buddies. I mean, you've got that ability. If you need to go see somebody, we can do that. Provided their parents are cool with, people in the same space." And so, I want to be flexible, and I want to make sure that these kids get a chance to develop. Now, I did want to share, because I made a pretty big mistake yesterday. I actually put what I thought was a decent, well-thought political opinion on my Facebook yesterday. I don't do that very often, but I did it yesterday. And I've done that once before, like a couple of months ago, 2-3 months ago. And both times I would say that it was a mistake. I don't think what I wrote was a mistake or wrong, but when you do that, you open yourself up to foolishness. And when I say foolishness, it's from both sides. I got people name calling each other in the comments, all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm tempted to go and delete it. And the other part of me is like, maybe I should leave this. Maybe this is something that, 3 years from now, when Facebook says, "Hey, here's your memory from November 19th," right? And I open up and there's a picture of Joe Biden giving his talk. Maybe that'll give me a reason to take pause that day and really take stock of what I felt in this moment versus what I'll think in that moment, right? So I thought, maybe I'll leave it up, because after a while, these posts die off. I mean, they can't keep adding to the thread forever, I wouldn't think, but who knows? Maybe they will. Let me read this, and then maybe I'll share with you what that post was. So in my book today, I have a John Maxwell book, right? And it's called A Leader's Heart. And this is a daily reading. And John Maxwell's nice. He makes them shorter. But it says, "As the leader goes, so goes the nation." And it gives us a quote from First Kings. It's actually First Kings 15:34, in case you want to look it up and read the context around it and have your own opinion. But it says, "He did evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of Jeroboam, and in his sin by which he had made Israel sin." right? And in his sin, by which he had made Israel sin. So what they're talking about there is a king over Israel. And there weren't a lot of great kings. I don't know if you read scripture or not, but if you read the scriptures, you'll see that there's not a lot of great kings in history. God didn't really set it up to have kings. And then the people moaned and groaned and moaned and groaned and moaned and groaned until God finally said, fine, I'll give them a king. If they really want an earthly king, I'll give them a king. But it's going to be a mistake. And it was a mistake, right? And so what John Maxwell writes here after that verse that he shares with us is leadership ability is the lid on the success of a nation or organization. Now, John uses the term lid because he has the law of the lid in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, one of his first leadership books, right? So it says leadership ability is the lid. So that means, kind of like the cap, right? So is the cap on the success of a nation or organization. When Israel or Judah lived under good kings, things went well, and under bad kings, things went sour. The heart and skill of a leader will always tremendously affect the life of the people under his direction. This is a law, both timeless and universal. See how this law played out under the Hebrew kings of the Old Testament. And then he kind of breaks down experiences that Israel, the people of Israel, would have shared through Old Testament times, right? And he says here, when there's good kings, right? So good kings drew loyalty from their people, enjoyed victory over sin, enjoyed peace within the kingdom, were affirmed by God's prophets, enjoyed prosperity, and opposed evil kings. And then when there's bad kings, it says, drew rebellion from their people, saw bondage to sin, suffered turmoil within the kingdom, were rebuked by God's prophets, often endured natural disasters and war, and opposed the good kings. And then it asks for your notes. I don't put the notes in because I'm thinking I'm cheap and I'm going to want to read the book again. And I don't want my notes to sour or taint my thought a year from now when I read this again. Okay. But it really gave me pause because we got a lot going on talking about leadership here in the United States. And it was interesting. The call that I had last night was actually stemmed from the post I made on Facebook, because he was like, Kurt, I'm confused. I always thought of you as being, an intelligent, open-minded kind of person. You communicate very well. So I was in shock when I saw what you put in your post. I don't comment publicly, but I'd love to have a conversation with you. And so, I gave him up a little ringy dingy on Zoom and we had a great conversation. And it's so refreshing to talk to people that are open to a conversation or open to viewpoints without yelling, screaming, and name calling and all that other stuff. Right. I was very clear. I said, I'm a man of faith. So, when the left says it's okay to kill babies up until the point of birth, I got a problem with that. While I have friends and associates that live alternative lifestyles, and I don't even know if you can call it alternative lifestyles anymore. I don't know what the proper term is now. I don't know what trouble I'll get in through this post. But I have lots of friends that are in that situation, right? Gay, lesbian, transgendered. I mean, I know these folks. But then when it comes up for marriage, right? I go, well, marriage is really a religious institution. If you want to call it a civil union or a legal bond, or we share the same insurance or whatever, hey, that's fine. That's a secular thing, right? I'm not going to picket. I'm not going to protest. I'm not going to knock on their door and be like, you're sinning, you're going to hell. But no, those are life choices that those folks make. That's up to them. But when you want to, call it marriage and tell churches what they're allowed and not allowed to say to people, that is where I'm like, no, absolutely, right? Because remember, as much as I believe they have their rights, we also have ours, and it shouldn't be a we and their, right? Everybody's got rights in this playing field, and careful to not obstruct those rights in my thinking, right? When I have friends of color and they say, well, we got to get Trump out of office, I can't wait until Biden's the president. Now they're celebrating, right? Oh, Biden won. Thank goodness Biden won. And I ask them, I go, what is it that the Biden-Harris ticket brings to you and what you consider your people, right? Because they made it that conversation, right? I didn't go there, but they made it that conversation, right? Say, oh, as a black man in this country, I really feel that we need to get Trump out of office. And I go, okay, great. What is it that Biden and Harris bring to you? What benefit is it that you expect to come from this transfer of power? And they say, we just got to get Trump out of office. And I go, well, but what are they going to do for you? I mean, are the open borders going to help your situation with jobs and your people? And they go, well, no. I go, okay. He did that. Pardon me. I said, Biden did that crime bill, put a lot of people away. Harris jailed a lot of people under, what would typically be considered like misdemeanor drug charges, and left them in jail and like denied probation and parole. And I mean, the list is ongoing for that, right? And that's pretty general information. That's not like some right wing stuff. That's general information. Everyone seems to know that. And I'll say, so they weren't especially generous, kind, or flexible in the handling of dealing with that. I said, so on one hand, you're saying, you're looking for leniency within the law, but you want to vote for people that have proven through their track record to be non-lenient. And they go, yeah, well, as long as we get Trump out of office, that's all that really matters. Trump's a crook. He's in bed with the Russians. And I go, wait a minute, with the Russians? I said, Joe and Hunter Biden have been tied to a Ukrainian oil company, while Joe is threatening to shut down the oil industry in the United States. Well, if he shuts down the oil industry in the United States, what do you think is going to happen to the value of his international oil concern overseas? Obviously, personally, he would experience a great boost in wealth as the demand at that area would go up, as well as the cost and the price of the pump and everything that the Americans would pay. I said, so is that something that you think adds value to you in that area? And so I wasn't sure what that was. And so I asked those questions, and I go, and the Russian collusion thing, they've already determined that, Hillary Clinton made that up in an email, and then, people went along with it. Apparently, according to what's been disclosed through released emails, Hillary kind of invented the Russian collusion thing. And then Obama and Joe Biden signed on, got some FISA reports. They eavesdropped on his campaign and all that. I go, so we've already debunked the Russian collusion thing, except for the fact that Biden and his family do business there. And so how does that work? And so when I ask those questions, I get those weird responses about, we just got to get Trump out of office. Believe it or not, I'm actually okay with that. What I just read to you guys is a fair amount of wisdom, right? And so I closed the book like a moron, but it said, I mean, if you think about this, I don't know who's trying to call me. I'm almost there. I'm one page away. Here we go. Oops. I will get there. I promise you. I'm trying to do this with one hand. Bear with me. Almost there. There we go. Bad kings. Bad kings draw rebellion from their people. Is it fair to say that we've had some rebellion, right? Cities on fire, riots, looting, violence, all kinds of stuff, right? Saw bondage to sin. Well, during the pandemic, we kept abortion clinics open. We kept liquor stores open. We closed the schools. We closed churches for a while. Closed restaurants, anything that had to do with socializing, positivity, things like that. All those things were closed. Gyms were closed. I personally believe, this is just me, that the more fit you are, the better you're going to be at combating this virus, right? So like I look at all the mountain biking and road biking and stuff I do, and I think, well, aerobically, I'm pretty fit. So at least if I get the virus, I got a better chance of, survival. Right. So gyms closed, right? Elective surgeries canceled. Uh, and then you just look at all the stuff that was allowed, like in California, the wineries were allowed to stay open, right? So we're going to close the parks, but you can go to the winery, right? So saw bondage to sin. Yeah, I would say we definitely accepted other things. And then suffered turmoil within the kingdom. Absolutely. Were rebuked by God's prophets. I I don't really want to comment on that, I guess, for this. But it says, often endured natural disasters and war. Now, while we didn't enter any new wars during Trump, I would say that we did endure a fair amount of natural disasters. There were more earthquakes, there were floods. That flood in Iowa was something crazy, right? Tornadoes, the whole thing. And then I don't even know who to consider a good king or who opposes what out there right now, because I really have a hard time believing most of what comes our way. So people ask me, they go, well, if you're such a Trump supporter, then why aren't you banging the drum and talking about voter fraud and all these things? And it's, part of me is like, maybe we are due for a change. Maybe someone else takes the office for a while. Maybe we get who is the world? Okay. So maybe it is time for a change. Maybe it's time that something like that happens. But I would say if they were to overturn the election at this point and say that Biden lost and Trump won, all those businesses that were boarded up 3 weeks ago, I have a feeling those would be leveled and destroyed. I think people would lose their minds. I think the amount of looting and protests and riots that would occur would be absolutely insane. And some might say, well, gee, Kurt, are you that much of a coward that you would stay away from what's right to do more of what's easy, right? And here's the deal. If there's that much opposition, if they're that passionate about it, and I've seen it from people that I consider reasonable, right? I've seen it from people that I normally consider reasonable. Maybe there's something to it. I don't know. Here's the deal. I consider myself fairly smart. I consider myself open-minded. I want to sit back and kind of see what transpires here. My comment, by the way, on Facebook wasn't really pro-Biden or anti-Biden or anything like that. I just thought it was really weird that on one channel, he was live and he was talking about, Pfizer bringing the vaccine to market and looking to, there's a process to bring a vaccine to market early, right? And so he was talking about the 2 really sustainable vaccine sources. He said that there was 5 that they were considering. There were 3 that were pretty much done, and 2 that were ready to come to market or something like that. And then so he was talking about that, and then he had an admiral or a general, I think it was a general, had a general that was going to talk about the distribution plan, right? So this is already happening, right? We're already clearing the way for the vaccine and a distribution process and all of that. And then on another channel, ding, my phone went off and it said, hey, it was Kamala opening up for Joe, and Kamala, from the office of the president-elect, who's not the president-elect yet because we're not done with the election, right? But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So he's from the office of the president-elect, and she gives him an introduction of, we are going to take action. We're not going to be like the Trump administration. And when we take over in January, we're going to make sure that, there is a vaccine and that there's actually a plan to distribute it. And I'm like, what is happening here? Like, I just went into a funnel of disbelief. I was like, we actually have officials on one channel telling us the vaccine that they're filing paperwork to legally release it to people, and they've already got a distribution plan in place and how it's going to work. And then on another channel, we have a guy who's not president yet, who's talking about how he's going to do more than the existing president because he's going to make sure that there's a vaccine and a way to deliver it. I was blown away. And so that was what I made the comment about. And it was amazing how off the beaten path that thread got. So anyway, I still had a great morning, still had a great breakfast with Hayden. I loved reading the wisdom that comes my way on a daily basis. And I'm looking forward to kicking ass the rest of the day. Got a great meeting planned for this afternoon and starting the weekend. I hope you guys have very similar plans in that you will find rest, you will find relaxation, you will find more direction for your purpose, and that you will take steps forward. I mean, make not do more than plan. Like make the plan, but man, when Monday hits or the first available opportunity, make sure that you put motion to the plan and you move forward. Have yourself a great one. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.